I was born in Burundi. I grew up in the refugee camp in Tanzania. I actually feared white people. People would call me an ape. So there was domestic violence happening at home. My life has been really turbulent. And then I was given an opportunity to coach AFL. If there was anything that I could say to anybody watching, is that it's quite important that you look at the foundation within. Hi, my name is Ndayikeze. I'd like to say thank you so much to Josh Talks for giving me this platform to share my story. Before I share my story, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land in which I'm recording this video on, the Wajak people of the Noongar Nation, and I want to pay my respects to the elders, past and present. So, I'm 24 and I was born in Burundi. A lot of people actually don't know what that is. It is a very small country with millions of people. However, if I mentioned Rwanda, you guys would know. We're right next door. And let's just say Burundi is a country that's pretty much been silenced for many years. The genocide that happened during the time I was born is very traumatic to even think of. So I guess this time that I'm sharing my story, I'm choosing to be vulnerable, partly because I think sharing your story is a powerful way to educate people, but also to inspire others to possibly live a good life, even during the time of turbulence. I was only a baby, and 1996. I only lived in the war for 3 years before my mom walked with me on her back as a 3-year-old to Tanzania refugee camp. In fact, I wasn't conscious enough to know that I was even a human being at the time, but I've heard stories from my grandma, peace be upon her, who's now passed away, and it was only last year, so it's a bit of a sensitive thing to talk about. But she looked up after me, and during that time it was terrible. Many people got killed, and from the stories that I've heard from my mom is very difficult. And as a kid, I grew up in the refugee camp in Tanzania. During that time, really, it was horrible. I guess I saw a lot of people get killed. I experienced violence. I was only a kid, and then coming to Australia absolutely clueless. This was 2005. I had no idea of what was going on. I was still not even there yet in my knowledge, but however, I did study in the refugee camp. I went to year 1, 2, 3, and then I came to Australia. I was absolutely clueless, and I was exposed to white people. So people of a different color than me, and that was confusing because I saw one person who was white in my country, and that was a pastor, and he was pretty much worshipped. So when coming to Australia and being surrounded by so many white people, I actually feared white people in a way, because they seemed more privileged, and I knew that from a very young age that I was a minority, and that I didn't quite fit in. So I went to a school that taught you to speak English, because I came to Australia with little to no English whatsoever. I only knew how are you, and I spoke that in a funny way, because my dialect, especially when you don't know English, you just don't know how to kind of articulate words. And so I went there for about 3 years, and during those 3 years I experienced things that I never really understood at the time, like racism. Like, people would call me an ape, would call me like a monkey, like you're black. Like, I couldn't even conceptualize like what black even meant. Yeah, I knew my skin was brown, but black, I didn't understand at the time. So I think part of the struggles that I went through was things like racism, discrimination. I got into fights, and my mom and dad weren't getting along. So there was domestic violence happening at home. you could just say that my life has been really turbulent. In regards to just the experiences as a young person, from the age of 8 all the way up to my early teenage years. I'm 24 now, so I've kind of outgrown those experiences because I've acquired knowledge. I've got people who really nurture me to be a good person and be a stronger me. So, but that time, it was terrible. I hate for anybody to ever go through what I went through as a kid, particularly like the racism. It really downgrades your spirit a little bit. It creates some sort of inner turmoil, but also like almost like personal disorder for you to know that you're not even human. Like for some reason, I grew up very antisocial. I grew up not knowing how to be like, not necessarily normal, but how to articulate what I wanted to articulate. So, I grew up in that. And then I was given an opportunity to coach AFL. Now, that was a turning point for me. And I did that through the Edmund Rice Centre. And it was at the edge of when my mom came out of that domestic violence situation. She got a restraining order, and decided to, okay, I'm going to take my kids out. So my mom's really kind of protected me all these years. And I really admire her as a person, because she is my mom firstly, but also she's instilled some qualities for me to be myself. A lot of African mothers you would see is that they have a lot of expectations of their kids. My mom, yes, she did have a bit of expectation because I am the oldest in the family, and also I'm a woman, so she wanted me to be something, but she later realized that that I was not fitting into her expectations, so she gave me freedom to be who I was. And so coaching AFL, that had its own troubles, but she gave me the freedom to do that. And I did that through the Edmund Rice Centre, and I was coaching the Edmund Rice Centre, the Lions program. I think it's the first multicultural team of its kind in the country, formed in 2010. So I came the year after and took on the assistant coach role. And those boys were twice my age, and I was like 14, 15. I got qualified. I went through the system, but I still was like, I didn't know what AFL was all about. I really had no clue whatsoever what I was doing. However, I was happy because I was out of the house, and that's when I got introduced to, what leadership meant. And actually, what they did is it instilled some leadership qualities in me to be a good person, and they introduced me to qualities that I didn't even know existed, like resilience, being motivated, and morals. Morals were an important part of my own development, like knowing what's right and what's wrong. Like I never got nurtured to really understand what that meant. So when I was getting in fights in high school and gave someone a black eye and basically got suspended and expelled, like I was like, it felt right because I witnessed my dad beat my mom up, so I thought it was right. But for me to get the opportunity to learn that violence was actually not the right thing to do, my life turned around. So I got introduced to even honesty, because I grew up lying as a kid. I would steal even, and integrity. I got introduced to these things through the Edmund Rice Centre WA, and then through that, other doors opened up. So I got to really learn more about how to stand up for myself, and that was a big issue in the community, that I wasn't accepted as a young person, as a young woman, wearing shorts, playing footy, but coaching men twice my age. There was a whole different issue there of how they thought that I was, doing some things with the boys, and it was horrible. I was only a teenager, so I grew up to really it took time. It's taken me years to accept me, but also to accept that I have intuition. I've always had intuition. I just needed a bit of nurturing. So I guess, I love my mom, and I love the opportunities that I've been given, and doors from there on. 2014, the year after I graduated high school, my life just, honestly, so many things happened at once. I've worked for the police, I've worked for the AFL, I've started my own business, I even attempted university. Honestly, there's so many things that have happened in my life because I took the opportunity to learn, to be open-minded to other things that life has to offer. I think knowledge is power, and it's only now that I'm realizing that knowledge is actually a powerful tool to get you to be a strong person. But also, so then, when you get in spaces where if you are challenged, you actually know what you're talking about, if you know what you're talking about. And the biggest thing that I've learned for myself is that, you are you are the priority in life. Like, I think we can easily get carried away with trying to do things externally, like being that person and being that person and being this person. And for a long time, I was stuck in that bubble, especially as a kid, where because I thought I was black and because I am a minority regardless, that I didn't have the capacity or capabilities to, influence policy. And, at the moment, I'm the Youth Ministerial Advisory Council Chair for the WA State Government. And I'm grateful because I had a lot of nurturing and a lot of mentoring. But at the same time, for me to get there, I really had to look deep within myself and make sure that I was looking after myself. And one of the things one of the paths that I've taken, and because I started off early, was, from sport, I've now, dedicated my life to looking to more into fitness, sleep, hydration, and touching base with my roots. And I think my roots really connect me to the fact that I am a refugee, the fact that I am a black woman, the fact that I was born during war. It's not an attachment, but it's paying tribute to those experiences that have shaped me for who I am today. Because I don't think if there was war in Burundi, I would be here in Australia as even 2019 Youth Ambassador. So I've had many experiences in my life, but I realized that if there was anything that I could say to anybody watching, is that it's quite important that you look at the foundation within, and this thing about consciousness, awakening that, and really being in line with your inner self rather than the external things. I mean, you could be easily impacted by what people think, impacted by external factors, things that are out of your control. But at the same time, I think inner peace is when you reflect, when you have time to put time aside for training, to really look after yourself first and foremost. And if there's anything that I've learned about life, it's basically that, because I think appreciating everything that I've gone through is important, but also appreciating me within the process is also important. So that's my story. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you've gained something out of what I've said, and I appreciate the opportunity to Josh Talks for allowing me this platform to share my story.
Tell us what you think about this video, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe.